Rome, the greatest empire of its time, an unstoppable war machine feared across the known world. But in 73 BC, a single man, a gladiator named Spartacus, did the unthinkable. He broke free, gathered an army of escaped slaves, and gave Rome the fight of its life. For 2 whole years, he and his army ran rampant through Italy, defeating Roman legions and spreading fear and panic into the mighty republic. And yet, despite all that success, it all came crashing down just as they were about to break free. But what went wrong? Welcome to Shoulda, Coulda, Woulda, where we talk about what should've, could've, and would've been done to avoid the catastrophe we're about to see. Well, Spartacus made a series of fatal mistakes that turned what could have been the greatest slave revolt in history into yet another cautionary tale of shoulda, coulda, woulda. So let's dissect how it all went down. Our story begins in Capua, home to one of Rome's most famous gladiator schools. This was basically a death camp disguised as entertainment. Gladiators weren't just fighters, they were slaves, forced to kill for the amusement of the Roman elite. And Spartacus? He wasn't a fan of that arrangement. So one day, along with 70 other gladiators, he staged a breakout. They killed their guards, stole weapons, and fled to Mount Vesuvius, where they started gathering followers. Slaves, peasants, and even some disgruntled Roman citizens began joining the cause. In no time, Spartacus had an army. And here's where the first big mistake happens. After absolutely demolishing a Roman force sent to crush them, Spartacus and his army had a golden opportunity. Get the heck out of Dodge, or Italy in this case. Rome was still figuring out what to do with them, and the smart move would have been to march straight for the Alps, cross into Gaul, and disappear into freedom. But what do they do instead? They decided to stay and keep fighting. Why? Some of his men wanted revenge on Rome, others wanted to raid and plunder, and maybe, just maybe, Spartacus started believing his own hype. Well, that was a bad move, because Rome does not take rebellion lightly. Now let's get one thing straight. Rome never lets things slide. Rebellion wasn't just a problem, it was an insult, and Rome didn't do insults. They did revenge. At first, they underestimated Spartacus, sending small, unprepared forces to deal with what they thought was just a band of runaway slaves. And guess what? Spartacus wrecked them, repeatedly. He crushed Roman commanders like they were training dummies, and each victory brought more followers to his cause. But here's where the problem comes into play. Every victory just made Rome angrier. The Senate finally woke up and realized, hey, this guy is embarrassing us. Maybe we should actually try. In comes Crassus, the richest man in Rome. He wasn't just wealthy, he was ruthless. This was the same guy who charged people to use fire brigades to put out their own burning houses. And Rome gave him total control over crushing Spartacus. That was not good news for the rebels. By 72 BC, Spartacus finally realized that maybe staying in Italy wasn't the best idea. So he tried to fix that by going with Plan B, get out by sea. He cut a deal with some Sicilian pirates to transport his army across the Mediterranean. Great plan, right? Well, it should have been. Except there was just one tiny problem. The pirates betrayed him. They took his money and sailed off, leaving him and his army stranded. And at this point, Rome was closing in. Imagine paying for an expensive service, they take your money, then nothing happens. That's the exact feeling Spartacus must have had, except with way worse consequences. But he had to deal with it, and so with no other choice available, Spartacus turned back north, straight into Crassus's waiting legions. Crassus wasn't just a businessman, he was a strategist, and he knew that Spartacus's real advantage was mobility. The rebel army moved fast, struck hard, and disappeared before Rome could react. So Crassus did something truly sinister. He built a wall, a massive trench and fortification system across the entire width of southern Italy, trapping Spartacus and his men inside like rats. Now, at this point, Spartacus had 2 options. Surrender, which would mean death by crucifixion, or break through Crassus's lines, which offers a slim chance at living. So he went with the latter, and he did manage to smash through at one point, but instead of fleeing north, his army stayed and kept fighting. The rebellion's momentum was dying. Supplies were running low. And Crassus? Well, he was tightening the noose. The following year, the rebellion came to its final bloody end. Spartacus gathered what was left of his army, about 30,000 men, and went all in. It was a desperate but necessary last stand. He personally charged straight for Crassus, hoping to take out the general and throw the Romans into chaos. But it didn't work. The Romans were too disciplined, too well trained, and Spartacus's army, exhausted, outnumbered, and poorly equipped, was obliterated. Spartacus himself? Well, no one knows for sure what happened to him. His body was never found, but that didn't stop Rome from celebrating like they had him mounted on a trophy wall. Rome never just wins. They make a statement. And the statement they made after Spartacus's rebellion was one of pure terror. 6,000 of his followers were captured and crucified along the Appian Way, the road leading into Rome. Imagine walking past thousands of corpses on both sides, hung up as a warning. This is what happens when you mess with Rome. Message received, loud and clear. In the end, Spartacus may have lost, but his rebellion shook Rome to its core. It exposed the brutal realities of slavery, inspired future revolts, and made him a legend. Even centuries later, and to this day, his name symbolizes defiance against oppression. If nothing else, he proved that even the most powerful empire on earth could be challenged. But if he had just taken the W when he had the chance, if he had left Italy earlier, well, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hand drop a comment about which historical disaster we should regret together next. Adios.